Excellence. It's hard to be a diamond in a rhinestone world. Dolly Parton. Dolly Parton, the great singer-comedian, established in the above quote the essence of excellence. Excellence is rare and achieved with some difficulty, just as the geological force applied to coal over eons creates a diamond in the rough, which then must undergo considerable work, from expensive mining to specialized cutting and polishing before it can be set in a jewel. So it is with excellence. It is hard won, but once it is, it shines, sparkles, and catches rays of light that scintillate in 1,000 directions. Faith. The function of prayer is not to influence God, but rather to change the nature of the one who prays. Soren Kierkegaard. Faith is a virtue. In fact, it is one of the 7 heavenly virtues, counterparts to the 7 deadly sins. Faith is the state of being serene in the trust that we are taken care of, that even in our darkest hour there is a power beyond ourselves that seeks our well-being. That power may be the God of our understanding, guiding our steps, protecting us from mischief, or it might simply be the knowledge that we have been given a gift, and it is this gift which allows us to walk in a path that is most beneficial and constructive for us and others. Faith is not a belief that the Almighty will do what we want. Rather, it is the trust that He will do what is right, whether we agree with it or not. Without knowing what the future holds, still we march forward. Faith and trust are our guideposts. Consider the story of Mary and Joseph. The Bible speaks of an angel that came to Mary and announced that she was with child, and not to be afraid to marry Joseph, her betrothed. Can you imagine the fear that annunciation must have created in the heart of an innocent 13-year-old girl at the time when fornication was punishable by stoning? Yet Mary accepted her lot, not knowing what the future held in store for her. She accepted the message of the angel because she had faith that her God protected her from harm. Faithfulness. You have my whole heart. You always did. Cormac McCarthy. Faithfulness is strict adherence to something, a rule, a tenet, and the letter of the law. But where there can be faithfulness to the letter of the law, one might fall short of the spirit of the law. A faithful interpretation of an ancient text is a close and accurate account of the underlying story. When translating a text, for example, language syntax may vary sufficiently so as to render faithfulness to the text doubtful. So it is in normal conversation. Faithfulness is the concerted effort to convey the true underlying meaning without embellishment. It is being true to one's moral fiber. The avoidance of anything might smack of gossip or might be misinterpreted in any way. Faithfulness is allegiance to a friend, to a spouse, to a story, to oneself. Fidelity. Never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect. Marcus Aurelius. Loyalty and accuracy of reproduction are what set fidelity apart. It means a reliability, trust, and constancy of meaning, as a painting that is so precise in its rendering as to almost replicate a scene with photographic fidelity, or the Bose sound system that claims to reproduce sound with fidelity. It is the jingoistic fidelity to one's country as an honorable stance of patriotism, the unassailable love of one's homeland. In personal relationships and communication, it is the promise of one's word, loyalty, upholding of cause. It is the accurate translation with attention to its finest details that sets Fidelity apart. Flexibility. The measure of intelligence is the ability to change. Albert Einstein. Intelligence enables one to gauge one's circumstances and adapt. If one were to rigidly adhere to rules or expectations, without flexibility, one could find oneself alone in the face of a changing world. Flexibility does not, however, imply variability in one's principles, that is, the tenets that one holds dear and honorable. There can be no flexibility about being committed to the truth, for example, or not gossiping, not slandering another's name. Flexibility does not belong in one's endeavor to do every task with enthusiasm and resolve to a positive outcome. Yet, one needs to bend with the wind, be open to recognize one's mistakes, and to be willing to adapt and change if one is wrong. Focus. To focus means to bring your attention to the center, to concentrate on one thing intently in order to gain clarity. Cheryl Richardson. In the movie The Last Samurai, the character played by Tom Cruise was having difficulty holding his own against his opponent during sword training. He was continually tossed and beaten until the son of the village's samurai approached him and said, "Too many mines, too many mines." When Cruise looked at him quizzically, the young man explained, "Mind wind, mind trees, mind mountain, too many mines, only fight." It was a question of focus. Cruise returned to the training, able to stand up strong against his opponent. The moral is that when doing anything, the job is to focus. Remove all other items from one's consciousness. Be at hand and on task. It is a matter of concentrating and giving one's full attention to whatever one is doing. Forbearance. Patience is the antidote to the restless poison of the ego. Without it, we all become egomaniacal bulls in china shops, destroying our future happiness as we blindly rush in where angels fear to tread. In these out-of-control moments, we bulldoze through the best possible outcomes for our lives, only to return to the scene of the crime later to cry over spilt milk. Anton St. Martin. Forbearance means patience. More precisely, it means putting up with, enduring. We have been trained to look out for number one, to take care of ourselves, and avoid unpleasant people or situations. In effect, it is impossible to live a life completely devoid of unpleasantness. If you go to the mountains to meditate, eventually you will become lonely. If you spend your days at the beach, you may miss your family and friends. You may even develop skin cancer. Many situations must be endured. For example, eating a healthy diet on a consistent basis requires some forbearance because it means doing without some of our more pleasurable foods. Being married requires forbearance as we iron our differences and establish a modus vivendi with our spouse. Raising children requires forbearance. Likewise, being single requires forbearance, as does earning a living. Every life situation requires some measure of forbearance. The ability to endure with serenity is a virtue to be aspired to. Where forbearance is a given, our attitude and acceptance of it may require some work. Forgiveness. True forgiveness is when you can say, "Thank you for that experience." Oprah Winfrey. It may be popular to believe that forgiveness is something you deign to give another, when in fact it is an internal phenomenon. I have a friend who periodically apologizes by saying, "Please forgive me." He does not expect me to grant him forgiveness. This is merely his way of saying, "I am sorry." In Simon Wiesenthal's book, The Sunflower, a dying SS officer requests that a Jew gives him his forgiveness in order to be absolved of his crimes. He equates such forgiveness as a pardon, a sort of erasure of his crimes, that he might now be able to die in peace. Notably, Mr. Wiesenthal chooses to withhold his forgiveness of the officer. The book includes a symposium of several luminaries from the world of religion, philosophy, anthropology, psychology, and ethics, voicing their respective opinions on Mr. Wiesenthal's dilemma of withholding his forgiveness from the dying SS officer. As one member of the symposium offered, why should he, the officer, expect to have the right to die in peace? Moreover, it was insulting of him to request that a Jew be brought to him for that purpose, as if forgiveness from a Jew could somehow stand as representative for 12 million of his fellow martyrs. Indeed, the value of the exchange was the SS officer's ostensible remorse, his awakened conscience, and his sentiment of regret for his acts. When one says, "I am sorry," that should be the end of the message. Whether the recipient forgives or not should be irrelevant. The virtue lies in the acknowledgement that a wrong was done, repentance and remorse, a recognition that injury has been done. On Yom Kippur, the Jews fast as atonement for their sins over the previous year. As a ritual, religious fasting is nothing more than that, a ritual. True atonement comes from a personal insight that harm has been done. The next step would be to express that realization to the injured party, if possible. However, the expression itself must be one way. It should not obligate the injured party to forgive, to expunge the deed, to pretend that it did not happen, or to deny it. Forgiveness from an outer source is illusory. In order to be meaningful, it must be experienced from within. It is therefore a question of remorse, rather than forgiveness, that is important. I remember a phone call from my ex-husband a few months before his death. We chatted a while about our son, and then, astonishingly, he blurted, "Yael, I'm sorry for what I put you through." He was expressing heartfelt remorse for his own behavior after our divorce. After I hung up, I found myself sobbing, deeply feeling his pain, the mortification he must have endured to bring him to such a humbling moment. He did not ask me for forgiveness. He merely expressed remorse, which he evidently recognized on his own. I was left with deep emotions as I imagined how he must have felt, how he must have experienced pain himself as he came to grips with our broken relationship. He died shortly after that conversation. Significantly after that conversation, all the bitterness I had held onto over the years had melted away. So much so that I was able to attend his funeral and even greet his wife without rancor. Fortitude. Let us be firm, pure, and faithful. At the end of our sorrow there is the greatest glory of the world, that of men who did not give in. Charles de Gaulle. When the going gets tough, the tough keep going. The quote above is much more evocative when said in French, that in perseverance, even in the face of hardship and pain, glory is met with sweetness of victory at the courage born in not failing, not capitulating, be it in war or our personal travails. The glory is in enduring, not necessarily in winning. Some wins are easy, others require determination and may involve pain. It is the difficult tasks and painful duties that carry us on the wings of pride. Freedom. He who has truly overcome his fears will truly be free. Aristotle. Freedom might be said to be the cornerstone of a happy life, the ability to make choices, to think for oneself, to assess one's situation and act accordingly, independently, autonomously. It is a self-reliant confidence that what one does is the result of his or her own choice, rather than having had to submit to another, be it compromise as a spouse or acquiesce to workplace rules and regulations, whether one yields to another's control or simply succumbs to one's own fears. For our fears and anxieties might truly be the masters of our fate. Freedom exists in the realization that our fears may serve to protect us, but they frequently overstep their usefulness. The instinct of fear cannot be overcome as much as befriended and accepted as part of life. Freedom demands action and thought in the face of fear.